In this video, I want to show you a problem that's popped up with the newest version of WAMPSERVER. So in the past video, I said to launch experiments, you go to your local host. So here, because WAMPSERVER is running, we have this page, and you see your projects. So before, we added these test and test2 projects, and previously you'd click on these links and things would run. But if you are in the new version of WAMPSERVER, here's what happens. I click on test. This thing spins and spins and spins, and then it fails to find the folder we're looking for. So I'm going to show you how to fix this problem, then I'm going to show you a better solution in general that I think everyone should be using. So the simple fix is this, that what the link is pointing us at is just something called test. What it should be pointing us at is localhost/test. So if I just type that in myself and hit enter, the folder runs again. And again, this works for whatever the folder names are. So here's the other folder, test2. So if I go to localhost, add a / and say test2, it runs again. So this is a decent workaround for this weird update that happened to WAMP. But I think it's in principle kind of annoying that you have to go to C, WAMP, www to add experiments or to test experiments and run experiments on your computer. And I think a better solution is going to be what I want to show you, which I think everyone should do, which is instead of having our server, in this case WAMPSERVER, pointing at this folder, we're going to point it at a folder of our choosing. So for me, I like to point it at a folder in my Dropbox. So here I'm opening my Dropbox and I'm just making a new folder. I'm just going to call it exp for experiment. So I can open this folder. So there's nothing in this folder right now, but what I want to do is I want to get my local host. Instead of pointing at this page, I want to point my local host at this folder that I created in my Dropbox. That way, if I'm making a new experiment, I can update it here, and I don't have to go back to C, WAMP, www to test the experiment I'm running. I can just work directly in my Dropbox and go to the local host and be able to run the things that I'm currently working on. The added benefit of using Dropbox is that you can link all of your lab computers up to the same Dropbox folder, and then just have each lab computer set it up to point at the Dropbox folder that's shared. Now if you're working anywhere, you create the experiment, you test it on your side. If it's running in your end, it'll also be running on all the computers in your lab. So I'm going to show you how to do this. So the first thing we need to do is we need to edit a file. The file we're editing here is in the C directory, WAMP, bin, Apache. There'll be a folder here. Mine says Apache 2.4.9, but whatever version of Apache you happen to be running is what will show up here. So just open that folder, whatever it is in yours. And from here, there's a folder called conf. I think it stands for config. And then we want to edit this file here, httpd.conf. Make sure to edit this version and not the one right after it, which is httpd.conf.build. And at this point, it's good to turn on file extensions. So if you don't have Windows set up to show you the file types of every file you're working on, it's a good idea to turn that on, because if you're going to be doing any sort of work with Collector, it's just useful to know the file types of the files you're editing. So I can show you really quick how to do that. So if you're here, you hit Alt on your keyboard, that pops up the File menu. Go to Tools, Options, or Folder Options. Choose View, and right here there's one that says Hide Extensions for Known File Types. You want to make sure yours is unclicked. So if yours is clicked, unclick it, because we don't want to hide extensions. We want to see the extensions of the file types we're editing. Hit OK. So now here we're back in the folder. So to edit this file, what you want to do is open it up in a text editor. My favorite text editor is Notepad++. So I'm just going to open Notepad++ and drag this file in. Let's try that again. Okay, there we go. And what we want to find is, we want to find the part of that configuration file that is pointing at the current DocumentRoot folder, which is cwamp www. So I just copy this www, go to my file, and I search for that string. So I say find all in the current document, and it finds two instances of it. So at line 230, we have this line that says DocumentRoot, and then in quotes it has the current file path. And at line 252, which is only a little bit ways down, it's the open bracket directory, and then in quotes it has the same folder. So we want to change this folder to the folder that we have in our Dropbox. So I can go back to that folder I created. So here's the folder in my Dropbox. So to be able to point at it, I need the file path to this folder, and Windows makes this relatively easy. So you see this little white bar here, or this lighter color bar. I click it and it changes to the file path, so I can just copy that. And you can't just paste it immediately here, because if you notice, WAMP is looking for forward slashes, where Windows formats it with backslashes between the folders. So I'm just going to open a new tab here, paste what we currently have, and I can just change all of these backslashes to forward slashes, or if we want to work smarter, I can do a find and say find all the backslashes and replace them with forward slashes and say replace all, and you'll see all these backslashes are going to change. And we still can't copy it, because if you look, there's this trailing forward slash that WAMP likes to have, so we need to add that onto our string here. So now we're ready to copy, so just grab all this, hit copy, and then we have the two locations we need to copy to. So there's line 230. So we copy, or we take everything from between the quotes and we paste over it. So now our document root is pointing at this folder here, which is in our Dropbox. Let me scroll down a little bit to line 252. Again, these line numbers might be different in your version, but it's just, you know, if you follow this and kind of use your brain, you can figure it out. So copy, or again, take everything from between the quotes, paste in the string to our folder, save the file, and now if you go back to your server and you try to refresh the page, here's what will happen. Nothing. So the reason nothing's happening right now is because we need to restart all of the WAMP services. So if I go to the WAMP server icon here in my tray, see this little green W, if I click it, there's restart all services. It'll go to orange, then red, then to orange, and then back to green, so everything's restarted. And now when I refresh my page, so localhost, or you can imagine I open a new tab and I type localhost, I get this thing. So it's pointing at nothing right now, so it's showing me nothing, which is actually good, because what we did is we told our server to look into our Dropbox folder. So this folder that we specified earlier, we're telling the server to look in here when we go to localhost. This is what we want to run from. And the reason nothing's showing up is because there's nothing in this folder right now. So I'm going to show you, I downloaded the files earlier from the GitHub page. So here's the file you get, collector-master.zip. I opened that up and it has the folder with all the experiment files. You can drop it in here into the Dropbox folder. Close this here. And now when we go back to our web page, we refresh localhost and we see the directory we've just created. If I click it, here we go, the experiment's running. But now this experiment's running from our Dropbox. So it's a lot easier to edit files in your Dropbox and have it sync across multiple computers if you're working on them, or if you're in a lab setting, to have it propagate to all your computers in the lab. And this works for multiple folders. So let's say we want to rename this folder here from collector, we'll call it test, and then we make a copy of this, and someone else, let's pretend, made a new study. So instead of tests, now there's a study, let's say they call it DRM. So if I go back to my local host, so see in my Dropbox folder that we're pointing at, there's two different folders, each a different experiment. And if I go to my local host and refresh, there's a DRM, so that would run one experiment, and there's test, which would run another experiment. And this is set up in a way, the way the code's written, is that these folders can be nested very deeply. It doesn't matter, they don't have to be directly at the root of your local host. So if you want to organize it by researcher, which is how we tend to organize our server, so let's say CC is one researcher and MG is another, which is me. So these first two experiments belong to whoever's initials are CC, and in the MG folder We'll call this memory. So now if I go back to my local host and refresh, I see I have two directories. There's CC, so I click there, and here are the two experiments that exist within there. They can both be run. And in the MG folder, there's only one experiment, so that one can be run. So this is a really nice way to work. It's a lot more convenient than having to drag your files back and forth from wherever you're working on them into your C directory, or pretty deep into the C directory. This way you can just work directly from your Dropbox. It's a lot quicker. It syncs. If you ever mess up some files, Dropbox does file versioning, so you can actually go to the Dropbox website and say, I messed up the settings file, can you give me the version that I had yesterday, and it can roll back that file to a previous version. So there's a lot of benefits of using Dropbox. But you can point this at any folder you want. And that's all I wanted to show you today.